Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Your Life. And we're going to be elevated today. Oh, I've been so excited to chat with the fantastic gentleman that I'm sharing with you today. We have with us Alan Heeks. He is an inspiring guide to helping people cultivate their well-being through parallels with nature. After a Harvard MBA and successful career managing building materials businesses, Alan has spent 30 years creating nature-based learning venues and leading groups there. In 1990, he started with Magdalen Environmental Trust, converting 130 acres to a mixed organic farm. Since 1992, he has created Hazel Hill Wood as a 70-acre conservation wood and retreat center. Alan has led many workshops with his 7 Seeds of Nature Happiness approach, including individuals, groups, community groups, NHS doctors. And he is the author of a fantastic book called Natural Happiness. So first off, Alan, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm really happy to be here, Paula. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, I just love it. I loved your book. Well, let's start out. Would you like to share a little more of your history and kind of what brought you to being so amazing and passionate about nature?
Yeah, because I still find it astonishing that I'm writing books and talking about happiness and organic farming. I mean, if you'd talked to me at the age of like 35 or 40 that I'd be doing this kind of thing, I would have really laughed. I mean, there's nothing in my background that predicted this. I was a happy workaholic. I was, doing well, running businesses in the UK and the US. And then something strange started happening around the age of 40, where I realized I was kind of not exactly running out of steam. I was getting a little burned out, but it was bigger than that. It was more about I was getting sort of somewhat disillusioned by the business world. And so I was kind of in that dangerous situation where I was sort of open to some new idea. And this idea came up about starting an organic farm, not just a good thing to do organic farming, but as a place where young people could kind of find their roots as they tried to make sense of adult life. And probably for at least a year, it was kind of like, this idea wouldn't go away. And I kept looking at the area. I thought, well, yeah, this idea is fine, but, don't tell me I'm supposed to do something about this. I have no experience at all in farming, education, working with young people. However, the idea wouldn't go away, and I got to a point where I thought I'm just going to kind of jump off the edge of the business ship and try this. And I think one of the good things about the Harvard MBA training, I say it's like being a kind of paratrooper. You kind of believe that you can parachute into completely unknown territory and find your feet and learn from experts, and thankfully I did. So it was also a good example of Mark Twain saying that the best way to learn fast is to make a lot of mistakes in a short space of time. I mean, some of the mistakes we made were astonishing. And amazingly, Magdalen Environmental Trust is still going strong over 30 years later, and it's still doing the work I set it up for. So I'm amazed and proud of it. And I think one of the big jokes about the whole thing was that although, I set it up to help educate young people, actually, I was one of the people who needed the education. So, I landed on this organic farm, coming from a business culture where you make things happen, it's take control, deliver results. And I was completely freaked out because you can't do it. And I had this very articulate farm manager, Peter, and one day he said to me gently, he said, look, Alan, you need to realize that an organic farm is like driving a tractor without a steering wheel. He said, you can't make anything happen. And that really kind of hit me between the eyes. Like, all right, well, how do you do it? And that's kind of one of the central ideas in the book, is what I call co-creativity. And I think it's really relevant to modern life in just about every aspect. When you think about it, there's very few things that any of us really control these days. We have to work with very fluid situations with other people, differences of opinion. And so what I slowly learned on the organic farm was the way that instead of imposing something, all you can do is kind of understand how a natural organism works and kind of steer it in the direction that you want it to go. And I mean, the skill that organic farmers have is really awesome, because that's a very subtle process.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And is is organic farming someone can individually get into, do a little, garden on their property, or, is that something that anyone can get into that process and feel?
Well, so I where this all started, Paula, was with the organic farm, and then more recently, like in the last 10 years, I'm now on a very happy second marriage, and my wife Linda is a really good gardener. So I've kind of the new book is based on organic gardening because I think that's much more accessible and understandable. And I would say absolutely anyone can do it. And in terms of how these ideas of organic gardening relate to human happiness, you don't even need to be a gardener. I think everybody kind of gets the idea of seeds and compost and flowers and the seasons of the year. And I think one of the lovely things about this is, there's an awful lot of books out there with kind of models of happiness and self-help, which are kind of a bit theoretical. Whereas to me, this is really literally down to earth. It's about things you can touch with your hands. It's about things we can all relate to, like plants growing, like those flowers behind you. And so I think it's more than a model. It's really, translating one form of life, like.
Yes. Oh, Alan, I think I lost you for a moment. Are you back?
You froze for a bit there.
Yeah, and you froze on me, so I'm sorry. Yeah,
All
we
right.
can carry on. My nephew can cut that out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I paused at that point anyway, Paula. So, you know, over to you if you want to sort of take this further at this point.
Great. Okay. Uh, well, something I love, that you talk about in your book is all your different analogies, such
Mm.
as, what we can learn from trees. Think of our own roots, the
Yeah.
trunk of the tree, the branches, is there balance? Share a little bit about that. I mean, it's amazing, these different analogies you share in the book that really gives
Well,
you food for thought.
well, thank you. So, I mean, this more comes out of I mean, I find it pretty extraordinary. I've actually set up four land-based projects, an organic farm, a woodland retreat centre, and then two what are called co-housing projects. I think you have a few of those in Washington State. Um, so it amazed me that, having set up this farm, which was quite a big deal, I kind of felt a calling to set up this woodland. And, I'd kind of like trees as something nice to look at, but the idea of sort of having a relationship with trees was way back then, I'd have thought that was a bit of a crazy idea. And the turning point was I organised something called a vision quest, which is like it's a rite of passage, as we call it, where you're helping. It's again working with teenagers trying to make sense of adult life. But the idea is you spend time on your own in a beautiful place in nature, and you kind of face your fears, face your dreams. And so we organised a vision quest at the Wood, and this was just extraordinary for me because these were city kids, and they said, well, the wood spoke to me. I had a conversation with the trees, and I thought, wow. So I started to sort of try and have conversations with the trees as well. And given my business background, I have to admit that when I started this, I would arrive with a clipboard and a series of questions. I'd try and have an interview with the tree. And I soon realized that it's a bit like in Tolkien. If you remember Treebeard, he says, slow down, humans. I think there's a lot of intelligence in trees. And one of the gifts they offer us is that in order to have any kind of conversation with a tree, you really have to slow down out of our usual overly fast kind of human pace. Just really slow down, ask a question and give it, hours maybe before an answer comes back. But there's this lovely quality about patience. The tree isn't going anywhere. And it's not going to speed up for us. We have to slow down for the tree. So, and I love the tree talk, the exercise in the Natural Happiness book. I've done that with so many different kinds of people. Anything from very stressed up homeless teenagers through to very sort of anxious, hospital doctors, and it works every time. And there's something about getting people to make physical contact with a tree or even imagine a tree. And as you said, that idea that we've got roots, we've got trunks, we've got branches with fruits and blossoms and berries. Again, it's not a kind of theory. People really get that there's a very powerful sort of parallel there that we can learn from.
Well, give us an example of what might be a great question to ask a tree.
Okay. If you're trying to make sense of a confused situation, I'd probably sit with the tree and I'd just sort of freewheel. I'd say, well, tree, I just want to tell you that I'm really confused about this situation. I'd actually talk for 2 or 3 minutes because in some sense, I think that the tree can take that in. It may be that it takes in the vibes and not the words, but I would actually talk out loud as to what was going on. And I'd say, I really need some help here. And then I'd just stop talking and I'd relax and I'd really enjoy that sense of the physical support of my back leaning against the tree. And if you don't get anything else, that is great. That's very comforting, that solidity and that presence of the tree. And what I find is that if I can really relax, if I can let my mind stop spinning around, and the tree helps me to stop spinning around, then at some point, and it might take 5 or 10 minutes, it might take longer if you're new to this, at some point, somewhere my intuition starts to sort of bubble up and I get this little voice that says, well, here's a way of looking at the situation, or why don't you try this? I think the 2 other things I'd say about this, Paula, are that for me, rather than just sort of march up to a tree and start talking to it, what I would do is, particularly if you're in a wood, when I'm guiding people, I say, look around and see a tree that is almost calling to you. Look for a tree where you feel you've got a kind of sense of connection. And when you feel that sense of connection, really look at the tree and admire the beauty of the tree and the presence of the tree before you just sit down with it. It's a bit like you wouldn't just sit down with a person. You've got to kind of introduce yourself. You've got to kind of, present yourself to the tree is the way I look at it. And the other thing I'd say is that when you finished this process with the tree, thank the tree. It's not good just to walk away and ignore it.
Oh, I love that. And I'm thinking that just being able to say to the tree, ask it the questions, speak something that my mind I've been thinking about and I've wanted to get out. It's like a release as well.
It's very much a release. I think the other thing I realize is probably important to say, Paula, I mean, with Hazel Hill Wood, where a lot of people talk to the trees in a certain area, the trees are kind of used to being talked to. And again, if you go back to Tolkien and Treebeard, trees that are not used to engaging with people are kind of sleepy. So, if you suddenly go into an area where people haven't been talking to trees, you've got to take it slower. You've got to kind of almost gently ask the tree to wake up and be prepared to talk to humans. I think this is making sense to you. I hope so. But if you don't kind of give it more time and more patience with a tree that is not used to talking to people, you might get disappointed. But on the other hand, I said that there's one tree at Hazel Hill Wood, a beech tree that I regard as like the guardian tree of the whole wood, and I've talked to that tree dozens of times. So the more people talk to one tree, the more the tree gets, oh, another human. Yeah, what are they having to say to me?
I love it. I love it. This is so
Right.
fun. Wow. And you have so many amazing videos on your website.
Well, thank
I
you.
just loved them. One, for example, is Nourish Your Roots.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about nourishing
Well, I was going to
roots.
say, so the book Natural Happiness is structured with what I call the seven seeds of natural happiness. So it's kind of, seven methods that you can use, and some of those are actual gardening skills, like composting, which I'd like to talk a bit more about, and some of them are, if you like, the skills of the gardener themselves, like co-creativity is like the way an organic gardener has to engage with the situation. But when I'm working with groups on this, composting is probably the one that people get most excited about. So if I can just take you through that a little bit, this was one of the big discoveries for me about organic farming or gardening compared to conventional or chemical methods. So if you talk about it on a farm scale, a conventional farm is basically pushing the growth of the plants by artificial fertilizers. And these are based on fossil fuels, and they cause pollution to the ground, and they also promote the growth of the weeds and the pests more than the crop you want. So as soon as you start using artificial fertilizers, you then have to start using artificial pesticides and herbicides. And it's like the longer you go on with this, the more of them you have to use, and the more polluted the ground gets. So it's like, it's a real vicious circle. And on the other hand, in an organic system, you're basically using waste as the main source of growth. So using plant waste and animal waste. So when I'm talking to people about their own happiness, I'm saying, think about emotional waste and mental waste. Think about negative feelings like worry and fear and anger, or think about negative thoughts like anxiety. And what I find is that with most people, they really don't know how to deal with them. So they're rattling around their system. They're exhausting them. They're exhausting themselves by just trying to push these things away and suppress them and say, the point about composting is that you face into your issues, but you have a method to turn the negative energy into positive energy. And in a group, I'll give people a simple breathing exercise. So I say, look, do not try this on the major issue in your life. If you've got a kind of life crisis, don't expect that you're going to kind of breathe your way through it in 10 minutes. But if somebody said something to you earlier today that just upset you and you're feeling kind of a bit rattled, then actually breathing deeply is quite a good way of doing it. And it's all spelled out in the book and on the website. And in essence, what the deep breathing does is kind of like recycling. You're extracting the positive energy and you're kind of discharging the negative element of it. And in the book, I've got a longer process where if it's a kind of middling sized problem, you can compost it for yourself. And if it's a big problem, then I'd say what you need is like a professional counselor or a therapist. And in fact, they can compost it too. And what people keep saying to me is, this is just a godsend, because what it means is that instead of exhausting themselves trying to push the issues away, they're actually facing into them. They're not exhausting themselves by pushing them away, and they've got extra energy because they're going to harness the energy out of the problem.
I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Good.
and I can imagine what you've seen, with helping so many people and sharing all of this. Has there been something that was like a wow for you when you began this and began learning about this and just diving into it?
Absolutely. I mean, another part of the joke about the organic farm was that for 7 years, I started the farm in 1990 and spent half my time trying to learn about organic farming. And then the other half of my time, I was, working with big businesses on change management and leadership skills. And literally, it took 7 years before I had this light bulb moment. I thought, hang on, the model I need for the businesses is the farm. I thought, how could it take me 7 years to figure that out? And I think the reason it took me 7 years was I really needed to understand the organic system absolutely from the roots up. I needed to live it and experience it. And having had the light bulb moment, what was incredibly satisfying was then starting to bring business people down to the farm. And Peter and I would do these guided farm walks, and we'd say, look, we're going to put you in the driving seat here. You're the organic farmer now. You've got to figure out how to deal with that field full of weeds without using herbicides. You've got to grow that wheat without using artificial fertilizers. How are you going to do it? And when we brought them back into the kind of classroom and said, all right, can you see the parallels with your business? They were so eloquent. They said, well, yeah, this is all about managing uncertainty. And what it needs is really close observation. It needs humility, and it needs, what I call co-creativity in the book. It needs this quality of kind of dancing with the problem and kind of living with the problem rather than trying to impose your will on it, because that usually just produces a very kind of short-term, superficial solution.
Oh, wow. That is so fantastic. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
thank you.
And I bet that is just eye-opening and for so many and really fulfilling in a lot of ways, especially when they can see that and get these different perspectives and solve problems, release things, what that can do for us in a positive way.
It's been incredibly satisfying working with it, Paula. And if you said to me, well, what's different now from when I started working with this over 20 years ago, I'd say the big thing is that I reckon that life these days is incredibly complex, very bewildering. So this skill of co-creativity, I think, is really, really important, and it's going to be even more important with all whatever uncertainties up ahead. So, it's the central chapter and the central skill in the book is this one about co-creativity. And just say a little bit more about it. It's also about, if you're familiar with the idea of the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So the left side of the brain is about analysis and logic. And the right side of the brain is about intuition and imagination, seeing the big picture. And I think one of the problems with life these days is that social media and computers keep pulling us into the left brain as if that's all there is. And one of the great things about contact with nature, talking to trees, co-creativity is all about harnessing the right side of the brain and the intuition and the imagination and pairing it up with analysis. They both have a part to play, but it's like, analysis is a good servant but a bad leader, you might say. So putting your intuition and your imagination and the way you connect with the bigger picture as the leader, I think, is something we all need a lot these days.
Yeah. And, with doing that, I've personally, I believe we are connected to nature. We are connected to that. And when
Yeah.
we open up to that, talk to the trees, connect with the nature, even the animals, listening to the birds. I think it can bring a joy, a contentment, so much to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a real fellowship between all forms of life, plants, trees, animals, humans. And I think that there's a kind of, we're all in the climate crisis together, frankly. So I think that sense of fellowship, it's very nourishing for the humans, but also I think it can help to sort of guide us through the crisis because we have to look after all forms of life, not just the human forms of life.
Yes, yes, that is so true. And you've mentioned organic ecosystems can teach us a lot about community. Share a bit
Yes.
about that, please.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to because this is another big theme for me. I've been doing a lot of work on the climate crisis in the last probably 5 or 6 years, and I think the outlook ahead of us is pretty alarming. And I think we can get through it, but we definitely cannot get through it as individuals or little self-contained households. I think the only way we can get through it is by sharing resources as communities. And I've been exploring that a lot over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And I'm talking about, when I'm talking about sharing support, I'm talking both about material support, like, in a flood or an emergency or a food shortage, we're absolutely better off sharing the resources we've got, but also about emotional support. A lot of us depend very heavily on the internet and the mobile phone and the social media. And, you just think about Microsoft going down the other day. There's
Mhm.
going to come times when we just need real human beings around us face to face. And what I'm finding very striking is that I think a lot of people have kind of started to lose the skills of face to face community because they're not in it very much. And again, we can learn a lot from the organic systems. So in organic farming, one of my favorite ideas is what's called wild margins. So in order to be certified as an organic farm, you have to leave the edges of your fields uncultivated, and that's called the wild margins. And the point of that is that in the wild margins, you get wildflowers, wild grasses, wild insects, butterflies, you name it. And that's not only good because it's like, it's sustaining diversity in the ecosystem as a good thing, but also what typically happens in organic systems is that if you hit a new problem with the crop you're trying to grow, the answer, the antidote, comes out of the wild margins. And I think this is a really, really powerful idea for human communities, because my observation is that most human communities tend to converge on the same kind of people. It's easier to hang out with people who agree with you, who have kind of an easy way of relating and so on. But actually, what I also know from particularly in sort of the work teams I've been in is that when you hit a new problem, it's often the mavericks, it's the people who are not easy to get along with, who disagree with you, who don't have the social skills. These are the wild margin people. So one of the big lessons I take out of organic systems is that human communities really need to increase their tolerance for the mavericks and the grumpy people and the people who think differently, because we're going to need those skills up ahead.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Alan. We have about 2 minutes left in the show. Will you share your
Okay.
website and,
Yeah.
and any last message you'd like to share with us today, please?
Yeah. So the book is called Natural Happiness: Use Organic Gardening Skills to Cultivate Yourself. And it's available as a print book or an ebook. And you can get it from bookstores, you can get it from bookshop.org, you can get it from Amazon. And my website is just naturalhappiness.net. And there's a lot of free resources on the website. So if any of the people following this want to check it out, go to the website, naturalhappiness.net, and you'll find, as you said, the videos. You'll find a lot of the resources there, like, a kind of starter's guide to co-creativity. And I hope it'll give you an appetite for them buying the book, because the book gives you a lot more practical guidance, but it also has some lovely sort of case studies of how this works in practice. The other thing to mention, Paula, is that I do a newsletter. So every couple of months I do a newsletter about natural happiness, but also kind of like events, online events. I'll feature your podcast in that. So if people would like to kind of follow this and sort of be part of the natural happiness community, if you go onto the website, then you can also sign up for the free newsletter as well.
Yeah, I loved it. And I signed up for it. I'm so excited. And I'm
Great.
so excited to share some copies of your books with friends. Alan, you are an inspiration and your information is so amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very grateful.
Well, it's been a real delight, and I really hope this is of ongoing benefit to you and the people that we're sharing it with, Paula. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Love, hugs, and blessings. Alan, love, hugs, and blessings. Thank you so much.